A topic that is dominating the sports world is the danger of concussions and whether or not football is safe for your kids to play.
And the conversation is not just happening in the NFL, it's happening nationwide, including right here in South Carolina.
A school in Pennsylvania has become one of many schools that have instead turned to flag football and skipped tackle football for some of its youngest players. In a paper published this year, the Aspen Institute recommended flag football as a standard for kids before the age of 14. A doctor and concussion expert from Boston University says that children are more vulnerable to hits because their heads are disproportionately bigger than their bodies, and then their necks are smaller and weaker.
People that start playing tackle football under the age of 12 have a greater chance for later life behavior, cognitive, and mood issues compared with a group that started later in life.
Well, Illinois, New Jersey, New York, California, they've all introduced bills to ban tackle football for kids under the age of 12, but none of those bills, unfortunately, have had enough support to actually pass.
Well, now we wanted to see if any similar changes were happening in leagues here in South Carolina. In Fort Mill, the athletic director for the city's rec sports department tells us they started offering flag football because of concussion concerns. At first, they only offered it for 7-year-olds, but at the parents' request, they added leagues for ages 5 through 12. Now, they still offer tackle football, but in the last 3 years, they've seen a decline in sign-ups. The neighboring city of Tegakay also offers flag and tackle football.
Well, as parents become more concerned about their kids getting concussions while playing contact sports, we want to make sure your family is prepared in case somebody at home does get hurt.
News 19's Whitney Sullivan talked to the experts and joins us now with tips on treatment and symptoms to look out for.
Well, we sat down with a local concussion expert from Palmetto Health USC. Dr. Jeffrey Holloway says a child is 8 times more likely to have a concussion again if they stress their brains and do not treat it properly.
I think the more we learn about a child's brain, the more we realize that preventing and avoiding injury early on would be beneficial. Switching from a tackle to flag football, I think, would be something that might be helpful to try to prevent some of the injuries.
Well, we learned a lot about concussions while talking to Dr. Holloway. The biggest takeaway is that every child will respond to these kinds of injuries and recover differently. Now, some people are more prone to concussions than others, and because of this, Holloway says students should wait until they're at least 12 years old to start contact sports. He says it's important for parents to understand the severity of concussions so they can best protect their child.
Usually I say if you feel not like yourself at all, let's try to be more safe than sorry and assume it's a concussion and then stay out of the game and treat it appropriately.
Well, because every child can react differently to a concussion, it is important for parents to watch out for any irregularities in their child's behavior. A player can take a hard fall and be okay, but wake up the next morning and feel completely different. Dr. Holloway says it's better to be safe and make an appointment if something doesn't feel right. And when it comes to recovering from a concussion, Holloway said the key is being patient. Everyone recovers at different speeds. Plus, he says making sure you fully recover from a concussion is a good way to prevent another. Well, a lot of this conversation often surrounds football, but our specialist had a few other sports in mind when it comes to brain injuries. According to athletic trainers, there are other sports that fall right behind football when it comes to risk, including soccer, lacrosse, and cheerleading. Basically, any sport where you can come in contact directly with another player and have a concussion risk. All right, so this morning on our poll, we've been asking you guys to join in. What age would you let your kids play tackle football? Now, we have a couple of different options for you. You can choose 5 to 7 years old, 8 to 10 years old, 11 to 13 years old, 14 or older, and you also have the option of saying, you know what, I just don't want my kids to play football at all. And right now, we are tied with 44%. Yeah,
saying no, or they've got to be 11 to 13. That doesn't surprise me. There's been so much talk about this. Something we've talked about at my own house, and I'm scared of. So we looked for flag football here in the Midlands, and we couldn't find it. There's Pop Warner leagues, and they have, I mean, it is a legit. We have a legit Pop Warner system, and there's several different teams, and they do tournaments and all of that, but we don't have flag football as far as like a rec sport goes. So I would love to see that come here, because I'd feel better at this young age putting B in something like that as opposed to full contact.
And I think
helmet to helmet.
there are a lot of parents that are in the same position that you are. You know, are their sons and daughters, they love football, they want to play football, but because we've seen all these studies that have come out on concussions and stuff, they're worried about their children's well-being. So it would be nice to see some of those flag football events come down to some of our rec leagues here in the Midlands.
You know, TBI, traumatic brain injury, I don't even remember talking about that 10 years ago.
Yeah.
Right.
Or even knowing that that was a term or that that was a thing, but now we've had so many different studies on what it does to you later in life and that it can affect your memory and your mood and all those things if you've had too many concussions. So
definitely. I think too, just echoing what you guys are saying, specifically knowing that all of this new information has been coming out over the past 5 years, we definitely feel like there should be flag football options out there. So
most
I
definitely.
would like that. But I'm surprised though that you said that soccer was dangerous as well, because in my mind I think of that as a safe sport for your brain.
And you said cheerleading too as well.
Any sport where you can run into another person, basically, you have a chance for concussion.
So lacrosse would be about the same thing too.
Lacrosse, cheerleading, soccer.
Interesting.
All right.
Well, you can go to WLTX.com, tell us what you think, /vote, or you can vote on our News19 app and tell us, are you letting your kids play this year or not so much, not till they get older.
Well, each year, more than 3 million children under the age of 14 receive medical treatment for a sports-related injury. Outside of that, high school athletes account for about 2 million injuries, 500,000 doctor's visits, and 30,000 hospital visits.
Now, those numbers seem to be astounding, and the shocking fact is that doctors say most of these injuries are preventable. So we talked to a panel of specialists from Palmetto Health USC, and they agreed that they're seeing more and more of these sports-related injuries than ever before. As a matter of fact, since 2000, there has been a 5-fold increase in the number of serious shoulder and elbow injuries among baseball and softball players. And it's not just the baseball and softball players, it's every sport. Dr. Mark Locke says the increase partly is due to what they call specialization athletes, so athletes that play the same sport all year long.
The combination of youth who are doing too much, too intense, and year-round has led to a definite increase in the injuries. I think the year-round athlete has gotten very popular, and I think that competition has gotten to the point now that we're seeing injuries.
Chronic overuse injuries are responsible for nearly half of all sports injuries in middle and high school students. These injuries are caused by prolonged repetitive motion, improper technique or training, lack of equipment support, or structural abnormalities.
Well, physical therapist Joshua Vaughn echoed those similar ideas, explaining that the problems surround training in just one sport and doing those same repetitive motions all year long.
If they're just playing baseball, 24 hours a day for 365 days a year, of course their arm's going to take a little more wear and tear. One of the best things they can do is go play basketball or go do something else, right? They can still be active, they can still have fun with their friends and be involved and be healthy, but they're going to give specific ligaments, specific joints and muscles a chance to rest, heal, repair, lengthen how they're supposed to. For some of these kids, we can't get them away from specialization, right? And that's where we step in and really try to encourage a specific either stretching or strengthening protocol.
All right, so we're not saying that young athletes need to take a break from sports altogether. They just need to play another sport and get in a variety of activities in the off season, and preferably it's ones that won't strain the same muscles as that first sport you're playing.
Well, according to the CDC, more than half of all youth sport-related injuries are preventable.
News 19's Whitney Sullivan is in the studio to tell us where to start in preventing all these serious injuries to our children. Whitney.
So parents, if you're thinking, oh no, my kid plays soccer all year round, and maybe they aren't interested in playing anything else, don't worry. There are many ways to help protect your child from injuries. Athletic trainer Jane Steinberg says one of the first things she asks an injured athlete is, what did you have for breakfast? She says that first meal is vital for active kids, and she says a honey bun does not count.
Parents need to feed them a healthy food, not a Frappuccino from the gas station on the way to the practice or the game. Water goes along with that. Athletes need 2 liters a day. But I'm a big calcium fan, and there's a lot of athletes that don't touch milk, don't touch cheese, don't touch yogurt. So then talk to your physician and get a calcium supplement with vitamin D. Vitamin D is huge for repair. And even though we're living in the South, lots of people are deficient.
They've done some recent research where they just take all the kids who have a broken arm and then they test them all for vitamin D and calcium, and over a third, 30%, are deficient. So you're talking about, you know, just if you took all your viewers, if you took all those athletes out there, you're talking about a significant number of people that are walking around with weak bones because of nutrition. Then if you combine that with sports, now you're going to have an increased number of breaks and broken arms and broken ankles and everything.
Well, you heard it from the experts. A few key ways to help prevent injuries: a healthy breakfast, plenty of water, and a diet that includes calcium. Now, here are some other ways to help prevent injuries. Have your child stretch before bedtime and before and after practice and games. We learned from our panel that children's joints and muscles can be fragile while their bodies are developing, and the best way to protect them is to stretch the muscles they're using frequently. Now, if you're looking for a more specialized stretch routine, you can visit the physical therapist at Palmetto Health, and they will help you find one that is most helpful for your child. The American Academy of Pediatrics recommends taking at least 1 day off of a week and 1 month of a year from training. Now, this will give the body time and rest to recover. Now, don't let your child play through pain. If there's pain, that means it's time to take a much-needed break and make an appointment to see an orthopedic physician. 1/3 of parents say they will pull their injured child out of a game, but will let them play through pain during practice. Keep in mind, 62% of sports-related injuries happen during practice. It's better to rest muscles or joints that are in pain than to seriously injure them further. Always make sure your child wears appropriately fitting gear. As the athletic trainer on our panel pointed out, a 50-cent mouth guard can protect your child from $6,000 worth of dental work. Now, we've touched on what some might call some scary topics, but we want to reiterate that every specialist we talked to said they would highly encourage all kids to be involved in sports. Athletics are great for their overall health, social engagement, and physical development.
Well, this week we've been talking about ways to prevent your child from getting injured while playing sports. However, we know accidents happen and kids do get hurt, and your first instinct is probably to rush them to the ER to get an x-ray.
But the specialist we talked to from Palmetto Health says there are actually times when it's more beneficial to hold off that trip to the ER and instead schedule an appointment with an orthopedic physician to talk to them. News 19's Whitney Sullivan joins us now in the studio to tell us the difference. Whitney.
Well, this might surprise you, but the specialists we talked to at Palmetto Health say a sprained ankle or wrist is not worth a trip to the ER. Now, if you're wanting to get an x-ray to see if there are broken bones, you should just make an appointment with an orthopedic physician instead. And the experts say skipping the ER will save you money in the long run.
If your child has consistent, persistent pain, complaining, my shoulder hurts, you see them reaching for the milk jug and, ooh, they need 2 hands, and oh, how long has this been hurting? And if icing isn't helping it, then I'd be visiting the doctor. But I think the loss of motion and the evidence of swelling, huge. I mean, emergency room physicians are busy with emergencies. An ankle sprain and elbow pain are not emergencies.
Well, here are some signs you should take your child to the emergency room. If anything is visibly twisted, broken, or sticking out of the skin, you should immediately seek medical attention in those cases. You should also visit the ER if your child has a cut that may need stitches or if you see a lot of bleeding. Now, orthopedic surgeon Dr. Locke says one of the best ways to decide if a child needs to see a physician is to see how they feel the morning after the surgery or injury.
If they have pain at the end of activities, it might be just activity related, but by the next day, the kids are so young, their bodies recover quickly. So I think that symptoms in the morning of swelling, bruising, all of that are bad signs. But definitely don't use the emergency room just to get an x-ray, because that's kind of the concept. Well, I want to see if it's broken.
Pediatric orthopedic physicians are also the most familiar with the children's bone development. Palmetto Health USC sent us these x-rays to show the difference between an adult elbow, which is right here on the left, and a child's elbow, which is right here on the right. As you can see, the child's developing elbow looks like it has floating pieces as it's still growing and forming. And the adult's x-ray is exactly what you would expect yours to look like. Now, when dealing with bones and joints, it's always best to see a specialist to get the best feedback for recovery and to save you money. So again, a lot of very good research here, because when parents see that their child has an injury, the first thought may be to go ahead and go to the ER, and that's not always the best case.
You know, give it time, and I like that what they said, give it time to rest and see how they are the night before, because again, when an injury happens, you know, children, they're, ow, it hurts, it hurts, it hurts, and again, moms and dads, they want to protect their kids. You know, probably.
they're looking at me because Brady got hit by a pitch, and I came undone. We are lucky we didn't end up in the ER that night. And but he had a huge, bruise on his rib, so I just waited until the next day. And trust me, if he was still in pain, I was going to call Dr. Jeff Guy. Shout out to Jeff Guy at Palmetto Health and get him looked at. But yeah. But she was right. They're in the emergency room is to treat emergencies, like somebody needs stitches when there's something impending. But these are better injuries to talk to an orthopedist about.
Exactly. My mom's a nurse, so I've always known that she knows we go to an X-ray. We need to go to a specialist for that. But if it's a really serious emergency, then you go to the emergency room. But when your child's hurting, it feels like an emergency. So I can understand why most parents would be like, "We're going to the ER right now."
A panic, breakdown.
And thanks for showing that X-ray too. That was very interesting.
Right. Yeah. Our producer Delaney put all of this together, and she got those X-rays from Palmetto Health, and it's so interesting.
It was wild. It was. I mean, you could. I'm no expert, but I can tell too that needs a lot more time to grow and to solidify and to make sure that everything is all tight, and so that's amazing to look at. Anyway, all right, we are going to take a quick break. We'll be back with more News 19 this morning after this, so stay with us.